Good morning. Good morning. I said good morning. My alarm has been screaming for 8 minutes. My fitness band vibrates on my wrist and reminds me, you slept 6 minutes short. I reach to my phone. Instagram. The first thing I see is Ashton Hall dunking his face into ice water and sprinting through Dubai. Next post, 5 hacks to become an alpha male. I go to the mirror. One raw hair out of place, and my skin looks so off. 5 minutes into my day, and I'm already failing. The problem I bring you today is the rising pressure of perfectionism, not just as a mindset, but as a system. We live in a culture of constant comparisons, of filtered lives, and unreachable ideals. This pressure to be perfect is everywhere, from the photos we scroll at night to the language of optimization, discipline, flawlessness that is sold to us as success. And even though we know that isn't true, we still feel like we're not enough. We still feel like we're losing. So today, I want to take you through 3 essential questions. First, how do we end up obsessing over perfection? Second, how does this further impact an individual? And third, how can we learn to begin again, even though we feel incomplete? To answer the first question, we have to divide history into 3 key chapters: antiquity, enlightenment, contemporary. In antiquity, Greek philosophers like Plato used the term perfect to describe God, all-knowing, almighty, beyond time, beyond change. But somewhere along the line, we began to believe if we had just to try enough, we could bridge that gap. Enlightenment, we started building machines, clocks, factories. We started measuring, testing, ranking. In this era, the idea of perfection was no longer just for gods. It became a goal for human civilization. Something we maybe could earn. Something we maybe could prove. Grades, clean record, social contract, schedule. The world taught us not just to live, but to optimize. And now we live in what I like to call the optimization culture. Self-worth is managed like a brand, where habits turned into data points, and even your grief has to be productive. But the most ironic part is, this perfection is not just expected, it's broadcasted. A 2022 Pew Research study found that 59% of teenagers feel pressured to look good online, and 32% of them said that they feel like they can't post unless they seem put together. We've turned our life into a performance. We scroll past 100 creative versions of others just before we get out of bed. But here's the thing. When perfection becomes the standard, your selfhood becomes the casualty. You begin to reshape yourself bit by bit. Mute the weird laugh. Edit your voice. Retouch your skin, your thoughts, your instincts until one day, the version of you that finally passes is no longer you at all. And that's the first cost of perfectionism, self-erasure. The second is what psychologists call the action paralysis, the fear of starting, the fear of messing it all up. Because if only flawless efforts count, why risk doing anything at all? In 2023, the Journal of Behavioral Psychology found that people with high perfectionistic tendencies were 45% more likely to avoid performance-based tasks. Not because they were lazy, but because they were afraid how others will judge their work as not good enough. Think about a young speaker who never steps up, not because they can't, but because starting feels scarier than failing. That's what perfectionism does. It doesn't stop you from failing. It stops you from becoming. And that brings us to the question that real matters. What now? Because words like accept yourself don't land when the only alternative society gives you are perfect or broken. And that's the real problem. Not just how we define success, but how we fail to define the developments in between. So, here's a 2 key step solution. Step 1, we create more labels. Right now, the only mainstream labels are successful or failing. When those are the only 2 options, people come to internalize self-erasure and experience action paralysis from being labeled as a failure. That's why we have to create more labels in the state of becoming. That looks like visible drafts when you show up even though you're unfinished, or growth pause for the seasons when your state is progress is slow and quiet, but real. And furthermore, think back how the LGBTQ community expanded our language of identity. For a very long time, you were either gay or straight. But now, we recognize that people can also be pansexual, bisexual, gender fluid, or transgender, not because the people changed, but because language describes who they were always been. It's the same with progress. With adapted language, we can express our situations better, and society takes it seriously. It's the first step of being able to be who we are. Step 2, we build systems that meet people where they are. Once we name the middle of it, we must also respond to it. We need systems that don't just reward outcomes, but reward the progress and adapt to the efforts. What does this look like in practice? 1, school curriculums that recognizes poor mental health can be just as debilitating as poor physical health. 2, workplaces that don't just reward outcomes, but reward the progress you made. 3, personally identifying ourselves using these language in our daily life. A world shaped by these language and the policy is one where I can confidently say, I'm in the growth pause and be met with support. A world where pauses are respected and becoming is normal. A world where people are no more afraid of starting, because the opposite of perfection isn't failure. It's having the words, the space, and the system to say, we are still becoming. Thank you.